Join Winnipeg Sports Talk, live from the NHL Draft in Las Vegas, presented by CoolBet, beginning on June 26th.
Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, joining us from the Cup Final in Edmonton. I think it's part of a byproduct of all the national media getting together. A lot of conversations behind the scenes. We're hearing more insider reports on potential players that could have new addresses. One name we've heard a lot about is Marty Necas in Carolina, 25 years old, coming off a real strong season. What will the ask be from the Hurricanes for Necas? And maybe more importantly to potential teams, what will the ask be from Necas and his representatives on a new contract?
So contract-wise, the belief around the league, talking to a bunch of teams, is if he goes full term, you're probably looking around the $7 million range on an AAV. That seemed to be the consensus. Ballpark 7.5. That seemed to be the consensus talking to some other GMs and other team reps around the league. It certainly seems like he's going to get traded. It looks like the writing's on the wall. They were telling the Hurricanes got caught in a bit of a lie, which kind of sucks for them, but oh well, they shouldn't have done it. They were telling some teams that were interested, like Calgary and Philadelphia, for example, that they're going to try to sign him. They're holding off on trade chatter. Meanwhile, they were talking to a few other teams about potentially making a trade, and then eventually had to own up to it and say, we're just not interested in trading him to your team. So right now, Calgary, Philly, they're out. I think Vancouver is out as well. Montreal, maybe. But there are other teams that are obviously very interested in this player. The Jets have expressed interest. I'm not sure where that stands right now. But you also have Nashville. You have Anaheim, Columbus, Seattle is another one that's I heard from the get-go the Kraken expressed interest in him. So it looks like he will be moved at some point. It's just hard to right now pinpoint whether that's today, this week, during the draft. We'll have to wait and see. But Carolina got a little bit of business done today. They signed Chatfield to a 3-year, $9 million extension. We know Jake Gensel's going to free agency. They're working on an extension. As we reported last week, they started talks with Jacob Slavin, and it looks like it's moving in the right direction. That can't be official until July 1, but we'll see. But there are, some other bits of business that the Hurricanes have to address. Whether it's Jordan Martinook, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Tuvo Teravainen. There's a lot of players that they got to worry about here. It's not just Necas, so we'll see kind of what happens as these talks progress. And it's possible that if Tulsky and the crew and Dundon and everyone in Carolina move him, that they may bring in a piece on that back end to help substitute, I guess, the fact that they may end up losing one of, if not both, Pesce and Shea to free agency.
Let me ask you this, Dave. Nikolaj Ehlers is a hot topic here in Winnipeg in his future. He's a big fan favorite. He scored 25 goals, none on the power play last year. It hasn't really been used in a top-line role. What do you gauge around the league for the market for Ehlers? We've heard that Kevin Cheveldayoff has been fielding some calls and is open to talking about it, and I think you have to, considering, the fact that he's got 1 year left on his deal. I think often, we sort of obsess about players in our own market that maybe aren't getting talked about elsewhere. But, from your conversations with people in the league as well as around the media during the Cup week, what do you make of the market for Ehlers?
There's certainly a lot of teams that would love to get their hands on that caliber player. The guy that, can come in, provide secondary scoring, can play top power play minutes if needed. He can be interchanged between first line, second line, whatever type of deployment you're looking for. And he's got a pretty solid cap hit at $6 million. His salary is $6.75, but he's got a solid cap hit at $6 million. We know that they want, the Jets want to address their blue line. Whether they move Ehlers for a piece on the back end or not, obviously we have to wait and see, but they also want to address the forward core. There's a reason why they brought in Toffoli ahead of the deadline to add some more secondary scoring and extra punch to the lineup. If you move out Ehlers, you're going to have to continue to bring somebody else in. So they're Chevy's going to get a little creative on this one, I think. He could potentially move Ehlers out, collect, a first-round pick or something else, and then package that up for an asset elsewhere. If he does go the futures route, I think that would then be swapped out to bring in somebody immediate, whether it is a scorer or someone on the back end. But he's got a few different areas that he can cover here, Chevy can, with respect to making a move here. But everything we've been told is the primary reason they're exploring this is that he, for now, isn't interested in signing an extension with the club as early as July. So viewing this as his last year, collect what you can and kind of move on.
Dave, the other player that was quite close to Nikolaj Ehlers back in the day that we started hearing a lot about yesterday is Patrik Laine, who, of course, finished the second half of the season and still is technically in the NHL Player Assistance Program.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about where Columbus is at, where the Laine camp is at, and if they do go the trade route, how difficult will it be for Don Waddell in Seabus to move a player with everything surrounding him in the past couple seasons, knowing that the bill is 8-7 for the next 2 years?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue, I think, in moving Laine, is the fact that, he has an $8.7 million cap hit. Now, it means one of two things. It's either Columbus is going to have to eat a chunk of that deal, or they're going to have to take back either the same sum or close to it with respect to that 8.7 from another team. May even be a combination. Take back a $4 million player, eat another $2 on his deal for the next 2 years. This is going to be a little bit complicated for Columbus. But as Pierre LeBrun reported correctly yesterday, that they've already had those discussions. Andy Scott, Laine's agent, and Waddell and the crew in Columbus have had that discussion already and are going to try to work together to facilitate a trade. So the agent has that opportunity to get engaged in some of those discussions to help make this happen. The sooner the better, I guess, for the player's perspective. But we'll see what obviously evolves here, because this happened relatively recently. So we'll see where things go. But the goal from both sides is to have Laine starting next season on a new team.
Dave, we got to give a shout out to DB, because Dennis was on the program a few weeks ago and we were talking about Mitch Marner, and he said, look out for the Vegas Golden Knights. And a lot of people were like, the Vegas Golden Knights, how can they pull it off? And then there's Elliot Friedman yesterday saying, watch out for the Vegas Golden Knights for Mitch Marner. What's the latest on the Leafs and the Marner situation, and how likely is it that he will be in anything other than blue and white when the puck drops in October?
I think Toronto has made it known to a select group of teams that they would explore that possibility if those teams are interested. I think Vegas is certainly one of them. Add Nashville to the mix, Dallas, Chicago. Those are a couple other teams that I'd heard that are right there as well. So we'll see if that kind of expands. I believe there may be a couple more, but those are the ones that we're aware of, the 4 teams right now. But they said, okay, go make a move or make us an offer, and then we'll go from there and see if he'll waive his no movement clause officially to make that happen. Mitch has been very adamant behind the scenes anyway, and he'll vocalize this when he can, that he wants to stay. His priority is to stay in Toronto. He loves it. He wants to stay. But look, if the team wants to move on, he's going to weigh those options. So it's now a matter of Brad Treliving finding a right deal that they like, and then going to Mitch and saying, all right, here's one of the teams that we know you would waive to. We've got a deal. Spend the night, sleep on it, and let us know. But I do think the wheels are at least in motion. They're not actively, they haven't, sent a memo to all 31 other teams saying, hey, we've got this guy available. Make us your best offer. Mitch isn't going to go anywhere. He's got that protection. But it's going to come down to where the Leafs feel they have the right move, and where that ends up being has to align with where Mitch would be comfortable signing off to go to.
Let's just say that he's like, yeah, okay, I'll take a trade, but I'm not signing an extension right off the bat, and a team's getting him for 1 year at just about $11 million a season. Like, is the benefit to the Leafs just moving the contract and having that cap space to go elsewhere? Can they expect significant return for a player that comes with that much of a ticket without any contract certainty moving forward?
I think the Leafs will try to maximize whatever the return is. So I do believe if it gets to that point where he is willing to waive, that they would then allow the team to negotiate an extension. Now, like Ehlers and Slavin and others that are entering the final year of their deal, they can't sign an extension until July 1. So either you make the move in advance and you have a handshake agreement and you then make it official on July 1, or you wait. We kind of have to see where that goes. The other factor here, and that this will also help in maximizing a return, is the Leafs have no problem paying his $7.25 million signing bonus July 1, which then, I mean, the only money is owed to Marner for the rest of the season will be 700 and whatever it is, 775 or whatever, for the rest of the season. So from a monetary perspective, it may be something from a trade side that we don't see until July hits, with respect to Mitch Marner. If it happens beforehand, then I mean, either way, we're talking about a huge blockbuster type deal if it does come down the pipe, but we'll see kind of, where this goes. But the Leafs will try in any way to maximize the return. And if that means eating that bonus, and if that means, allowing them to speak with Darren Ferris's agent to get an extension done, then I think the Leafs will do what they can to max this return.
David Pagnotta of the fourth period with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Last one before we go. It's certainly not a team that's involved in the playoffs and hasn't been for a while, but they have a new home, Utah, the former Arizona Coyotes. Yeah. What do you hear? To me, they're the most interesting team going into the draft with all the draft capital, the new location, new ownership. What are you hearing about Utah, and what's intriguing to you about all of their options when it comes to revamping that roster, maybe bringing in a little bit more marquee talent, if you will, to kick things off in a great way in Salt Lake City?
They have money to burn, and Ryan Smith has let it known to his GM, Bill Armstrong, to spend it. So the defense is an area that they're going to prioritize and have prioritized in terms of upgrading. So they'll be very
signed for the next year.
No, exactly. They've got a couple restricted free agents. Sean Dursey will get his deal. Mosier and I think there's another one. Valimaki. No, he's the goalie. Anyway, they got somebody else in terms of restricted. So they have three controllable guys. But yeah, they want to solidify that back end. So Bill Armstrong's going to be aggressive in trying to bolster that blue line, get guys here with terms, sign free agents to long-term deals, and then also add up front. Like a lot of teams, I mean, it's basically, top four and top six scorers. Like almost every team would love to add that. But Utah will now have the ability to pursue players and to spend the money on them the right way. So we'll see whatever they're going to end up being called, the Outlaws, the Yetis, the whatever. They're willing to spend, and they're starting to make it known to agents that they have money, and that if your client is interested in exploring this opportunity, this is somewhere that they should seriously consider.
Yeah, they got a ton of money, and they have got a ton of draft capital as well, if they've got to use that to make some deals. We'll be paying close attention to Utah when we get to Vegas, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in Vegas in a couple of weeks when we get together and we hit up the Sphere.